The phone call came on a Thursday afternoon while I was reviewing contracts in my corner office. Amanda, my sister Heather's wedding planner, sounded nervous when she said my name. "Your family has removed you from the guest list for Saturday's wedding," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "But they're keeping the $88,000 you paid for everything." I sat frozen, staring out at the city skyline, unable to process what I'd just heard. My own family had betrayed me. I couldn't move for a full minute after Amanda hung up. My hand still gripped the phone, knuckles white, as my mind raced backward through the past 6 months. I'm Pearl, 32 years old, and I'd spent the last 8 years building Pearl Events & Co. from absolutely nothing into one of the most successful event planning businesses in the region. It hadn't been easy. Late nights, missed holidays, sacrificed relationships. But I'd made it work through sheer determination and a genuine love for creating beautiful moments for people. My sister Heather was 4 years younger, still living at home with our parents in the suburbs. We'd always been different. I was the driven one, the one who left for college on a full scholarship and never looked back. Heather stayed close to home, working retail jobs that never quite stuck, always talking about her dreams but never quite chasing them. Our parents, Diane and Robert, had always treated us differently too. I was the strong one who could handle anything. Heather was the baby, the fragile one who needed protection and support. Despite this dynamic, I genuinely loved my sister. When she got engaged to Brandon 6 months ago after 5 years together, I was thrilled for her. Brandon seemed like a good guy, steady and kind, working as an accountant at a mid-sized firm. They'd been saving for a wedding, but the numbers just weren't adding up. Heather had been devastated, crying over Pinterest boards she couldn't afford, venues that were out of reach. That's when I made my offer. I wanted to do something generous, something that showed how much I loved her. I offered to cover the major wedding expenses as my gift to her, not through my own companies, though I owned several vendors by then. I didn't want her to feel controlled or obligated. I wanted her to have complete freedom to choose what she wanted. So I simply paid the invoices as they came in. $22,000 for the venue, a beautiful estate with gardens and a ballroom. $28,000 for full-service catering with a customized menu. $12,000 for elaborate floral arrangements she'd been dreaming about since she was a little girl. $8,000 for photography, $6,000 for videography, $4,000 for the DJ, $5,000 for luxury transportation, and $3,000 for a custom cake from the bakery she'd been following on social media for years. $88,000 total. I'd paid every invoice in full over 3 months, money I'd earned through years of hard work. I never held it over her head, never mentioned it twice. I just wanted my baby sister to have her perfect day. But looking back now, things had shifted about a month ago. Heather's texts became shorter, less frequent. She stopped sending me excited updates about dress fittings and menu tastings. At our mother's birthday dinner 2 weeks ago, Heather barely looked at me, staying on the opposite side of the room all night. When I tried to ask if everything was okay, she'd mumbled something about wedding stress and walked away. I'd assumed it was just pre-wedding jitters. Brides get overwhelmed. I understood that. I'd planned hundreds of weddings. I knew the pressure. So I gave her space, sent encouraging texts, offered to help with anything she needed. I thought I was being supportive. Now, sitting in my office with Amanda's words echoing in my head, I realized how blind I'd been. This wasn't sudden. This had been planned. They decided to exclude me, to take my money and shut me out, and they'd done it deliberately. I grabbed my phone and called Amanda back. She answered on the first ring, clearly expecting me. "Tell me exactly what my mother said," I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Amanda hesitated, then spoke quietly. "Your mother called me yesterday. She said you'd understand why you couldn't attend. She said it was a family decision, and that I should remove you from all the lists. The rehearsal dinner tomorrow, the ceremony Saturday, the reception, everything. She said the money you paid was a gift, so there was no issue with refunds. My blood went cold. What vendors are being used? I asked. Amanda began listing them. The estate venue, Riverside Gardens, the catering company, Savory Affairs, the florist, Petal and Stem Design, the photography team, Moments Captured. As she continued down the list, my heart started pounding harder and harder. Every single vendor she named was a company I owned. I'd built my business strategically over the years, starting with event planning and then acquiring or partnering with key vendors. It gave me more control over quality, better pricing for clients, and a diversified revenue stream. But I operated them under different business names, DBA structures that kept them feeling independent. Riverside Gardens didn't advertise that it was owned by Pearl Events & Co., neither did Savory Affairs or any of the others. I'd been so focused on giving Heather freedom of choice that I'd never mentioned I owned these companies. And apparently, she'd chosen them independently, having no idea they were all mine. Which meant my family had no idea that when they booked Heather's dream wedding, they'd booked my entire empire. Amanda was still talking, oblivious. Is everything okay, Miss Donovan? She still didn't realize who I was. The contracts had all been processed through my corporate accounts under the business names. I'll call you back, I said, and hung up before she could respond. For 5 minutes, I sat in complete silence. Then I called Maya, my assistant and right hand, for the past 6 years. She picked up immediately. Boss, what's wrong? She knew me well enough to hear the emotion I was trying to hide. I told her everything. The phone call from Amanda, the removal from the guest list, the kept money. And then the kicker, they'd unknowingly booked all of my companies. Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she said, her voice tight with anger, "Tell me what you need me to do. Pull every contract, every communication, every payment record related to Heather's wedding. I need to see everything within the hour." She didn't ask why. She just said, "Consider it done." While I waited, I opened my personal banking records. Every payment I'd made to the vendors had gone directly to my own companies. The money had essentially cycled back to me, though I hadn't thought of it that way when I was paying the invoices. I'd just been a sister helping her family. But they didn't know that. They thought they were keeping $88,000 that I'd never see again. They thought they were using independent vendors who had no connection to me. They thought they'd won. My phone rang. It was my younger brother, Jack. He was 25, still figuring out his life, working at a tech startup. We'd always been friendly, though not particularly close. I answered. "Pearl," he said, and I could hear the discomfort in his voice. I heard what happened. "You heard, or you were part of it?" I asked flatly. He sighed. "I tried to say something. I swear I did. But Mom and Heather, they wouldn't listen. Tell me what happened, Jack. Tell me the truth." And he did. He told me everything, and with each word, my heart broke a little more. Jack's voice was strained as he explained. "It started about 2 months ago. You remember when you missed Heather's bridal shower?" I closed my eyes. I'd been in Napa Valley dealing with an emergency. One of my biggest clients was having a destination wedding, and the venue had flooded 3 days before the event. I'd spent 72 hours straight finding a new location, moving all the vendors, and making sure the wedding happened. I'd sent Heather a huge bouquet of flowers, with an apology note and a promise to make it up to her. "Yeah, I remember," I said quietly. Jack continued. "Mom lost it. She told everyone that you chose business over family, that you think you're better than us now, that your offer to pay for the wedding was really just about control and showing off how successful you are." I felt like I'd been punched. "That's not," I started, but Jack cut me off. "I know, Pearl. I know that's not true. But Heather was already feeling sensitive about your success. You know how she's always compared herself to you. And when Mom started feeding her this narrative, Heather ate it up. She wanted to believe it because it justified all her resentment." My throat tightened. What else did they say? Jack paused. Last Sunday, there was a family dinner. You weren't invited. Everyone was there. Mom, Dad, Heather, Brandon, even Grandma Grace. And Brandon's mother, Carol, was there too. Carol. I'd met her twice. Old money, the kind of wealth that came with condescension and pearl-clutching judgments about anyone who hadn't inherited their fortune. She looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe both times. Jack's voice dropped lower. Carol spent an hour talking about how new money people like you don't understand real class, how you were probably trying to upstage Heather at her own wedding. Mom agreed with everything she said. And I'm sorry, Pearl, but you need to know this. Then they all toasted. To what? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer. To finally putting you in your place. Jack sounded miserable. Heather said, and I'm quoting, let her pay for everything. Then she can watch from home like the outsider she chose to be. Everyone laughed. Even Dad. Grandma Grace didn't say anything. She just sat there, but she didn't defend you either. I couldn't breathe. My own grandmother, who I visited every single week, bringing her groceries and sitting with her for hours, had stayed silent while they mocked me. Jack, I whispered, will you stand with me on this? There was a long pause. Pearl, I want to. I really do. But they're my family too. I can't choose sides. I just can't. I understand, I said, though I really didn't. I hung up. My phone buzzed. A text from Maya. Got everything. You need to see this. I walked to her desk. Maya had printed out every contract, every email, every communication. She spread them across her workspace like evidence at a crime scene. Look at this, she said, pointing to the timeline. Heather booked all these vendors 6 months ago, before you even offered to pay. She chose your companies completely independently. I stared at the dates. She was right. The contracts were all signed before I'd made my offer, which meant Heather had genuinely chosen my vendors on their own merit. She'd loved what they offered. She'd wanted them for her wedding, and that made everything somehow worse. Maya pulled up another document. And look at this. Every payment you made went back to your own companies. Technically, you funded your own businesses to provide services for a wedding you're now not invited to. But they don't know that. They think they've got your money and vendors who have nothing to do with you. I sat down heavily in Maya's chair. What kind of family does this? I asked no one in particular. Maya put a hand on my shoulder. A family that doesn't deserve you. So what are you going to do? I pulled out my phone and looked at Amanda's number. I'm going to tell them the truth. And then I'm going to make them face what they've done. But first, I needed to confront them in person. I needed to look them in the eyes and ask them why. Maybe it was foolish. Maybe I should have just pulled all the vendors and been done with it. But some part of me still hoped there was an explanation, some misunderstanding that could be cleared up. I was wrong. I drove to my parents' house the next morning. It was Friday, the day before the wedding. I knew they'd be there because the rehearsal brunch was happening. The same rehearsal brunch I hadn't been invited to. When I pulled up, I saw multiple cars in the driveway. My parents' sedan, Heather's small hatchback, a BMW I recognized as Brandon's, and a Mercedes that had to be Carol's. They were all there. I used my key to let myself in. Nobody had ever asked for it back, and I'd never thought to question why. Now I understood. They'd probably forgotten I had it, too busy plotting my exclusion. The dining room was full of people and laughter. I walked in, and it was like someone had hit pause on a movie. Everyone froze. My mother turned pale. My father dropped his fork. Heather's mouth fell open. Brandon looked confused, like he couldn't figure out why the mood had suddenly changed. And Carol, sitting at the head of the table like she owned the place, sneered at me. You weren't invited, Carol said, her voice dripping with disdain. I ignored her and looked at my mother. I got an interesting call yesterday from Amanda. Heather immediately went on the defensive. You don't belong here anymore. I kept my voice calm, controlled. Because I missed one bridal shower due to a work emergency? My mother stood up, her face flushed. It's always work with you, Pearl. Always putting yourself first. Carol jumped in, clearly enjoying this. This is a family event. Since you clearly don't value family, there's no reason for you to be here. I pulled out the folder I'd brought and set it on the table. I slid copies of my bank statements across the polished wood. I paid $88,000. For a wedding I'm now banned from. Heather grabbed one of the statements. That was a gift. You offered. You don't get to hold it over my head now. My chest felt tight, but I pushed on. I never held anything over anyone. I loved you. I wanted you to have your dream wedding. My father finally spoke, and his words cut deeper than anyone else's. Pearl, honey, maybe you should just let this go. Let your sister have her day. I stared at him. My own father thought I was the problem, that I should just walk away and pretend none of this happened. My mother crossed her arms. We've made our decision. You can leave now. But then Brandon spoke up, and his voice was uncertain. Wait. Hold on. Nobody told me Pearl was uninvited. Heather, what's going on? Heather squirmed in her seat. Brandon, this is between my family and... Brandon's confusion was turning to anger. Pearl paid for our entire wedding, and we're not even inviting her? What am I missing here? Carol snapped at her son. Brandon, stay out of this. This doesn't concern you. Brandon stood up, pulling out his own folder that had been sitting beside his plate. Actually, Mom, it does concern me. Because I need to say something too. The room went completely silent. Brandon looked at his mother with an expression I'd never seen on his face before. Controlled fury. For the past 2 months, you've been trying to get me to sign a post-nuptial agreement. You said it was to protect my assets. But I finally read the fine print this week. Carol's face went red. Brandon, we'll discuss this later. No, we'll discuss it now. Brandon's voice was shaking. You drafted an agreement that would basically leave Heather with nothing if we divorced. You've been calling her a gold digger behind everyone's back. You told me last week that she was marrying me for money and I should protect myself. Heather gasped. You said what? Carol tried to recover. I was just being practical. These situations require precautions. Brandon shook his head. You've been sabotaging my relationship this whole time. And now I find out that my fiancé's family has been sabotaging her relationship with her sister. He looked around the room. What is wrong with all of you? The room erupted. Diane started yelling at Carol. Carol yelled back. Heather was crying. My father sat frozen, looking like he wanted to disappear. Jack, who I hadn't noticed sitting in the corner, had his head in his hands. I stood there watching my family implode, and I realized something. This wasn't about the wedding. This wasn't even about the money. This was about years of resentment, jealousy, and dysfunction finally boiling over. I picked up my folder and walked toward the door. Before I left, I turned back. I'll make this simple. I'm leaving. And I'm taking my money with me. As I walked out, the screaming followed me all the way to my car. I drove back to my office in a daze. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I'd gone there hoping for an explanation, maybe even an apology. Instead, I'd watched my family tear itself apart, and I was still the villain in their story. When I got to my office, Maya took one look at my face and pulled me into her office, closing the door. She made me sit down and brought me water and tissues I didn't realize I needed until I was using them. Boss, she said gently, just say the word. Tell me what you want to do. I wiped my eyes, angry at myself for crying. They don't deserve tears. I need to think. I spent the afternoon in my office with the door closed, staring at contracts and trying to figure out what I wanted. Part of me wanted to burn it all down. Pull every vendor, cancel everything, let them scramble. They'd deserve it. But another part of me kept thinking about the little girl Heather used to be. The one who followed me around, who looked at me like I hung the moon. When had we become enemies? When had my success become something that hurt her instead of inspired her? At 7 in the evening, my phone rang. I looked at the screen and saw 63 missed calls from various family members. Texts were flooding in. My mother's messages went from demanding to begging. Heather's were angry, then desperate. But this call was from a number I didn't recognize. I answered. Pearl? It's Brandon. Please don't hang up. I'm listening, I said carefully. I called off the wedding. I sat up straight. What? After you left, everything fell apart. My mother admitted she's been trying to break Heather and me up for months. Your family admitted they've been treating you terribly for years. And Heather finally told the truth. She said she was jealous of you, that she wanted to take you down a peg. Those were her exact words. I closed my eyes, the pain fresh again. Brandon's voice was quiet but firm. I can't marry someone who would treat their sister like that. I told her we're done. At least until she gets help and figures out why she thinks it's okay to use people and throw them away. Brandon, I said, not sure what else to say. I know this doesn't fix what they did to you. But I thought you should know. You didn't deserve any of this, Pearl. You're a good person who tried to do something generous, and your family punished you for it. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there holding my phone, processing. The wedding was already falling apart. Brandon had called it off. I hadn't even made my move yet, and everything was crumbling. Maya knocked and came in. She'd clearly been listening. What are you going to do? I looked at her. This woman who'd been loyal to me for 6 years, who'd worked late nights and early mornings, who'd believed in me when I was nobody. I'm going to call Amanda, and I'm going to tell her the truth. I pulled up Amanda's number and called. She answered on the first ring, her voice frantic. Miss Donovan, I've been trying to reach you. The wedding tomorrow is... Amanda, I interrupted. This is Pearl Donovan, CEO of Pearl Events & Co. There was a long pause. Then, in a tiny voice, Miss Donovan, you're the Pearl? The owner? Yes. And I own every single vendor servicing tomorrow's wedding. I heard her gasp. Oh my God. I had no idea. The contracts, they're all under different names. I didn't realize. I know. That was intentional. I wanted my vendors to stand on their own merit. Amanda started talking fast, her words tumbling over each other. Miss Donovan, I am so sorry. When your mother called me and told me to remove you, I thought it was just a family disagreement. I had no idea she was lying about you. I had no idea you'd paid for everything. I had no idea these were your companies. I would never have. Amanda, I said, cutting through her panic, tell me exactly what my mother said. She took a shaky breath. She called Wednesday afternoon. She said you'd caused drama and were threatening to ruin the wedding. She said you were jealous of Heather and mentally unstable. She made you sound dangerous. She told me to quietly remove you from all lists and not tell you because it would set you off. I felt sick. My own mother had painted me as mentally ill and dangerous. I'm so sorry, Amanda whispered. I should have questioned it. I should have called you directly. You didn't know, I said. But here's what's going to happen now. You're going to call my mother. You're going to tell her that Pearl Events & Co. has been informed of the situation. Tell her all vendors are awaiting final approval before tomorrow. Tell her the CEO wants to speak with her directly. But don't tell her I'm the CEO. Not yet. You want them to panic? Amanda asked slowly. I want them to understand what they've done, I corrected. 20 minutes later, Amanda called my mother on speakerphone. I listened from my office as Maya recorded it on her laptop. Mrs. Morrison? Amanda's voice was professional but tight. We have a situation with tomorrow's wedding. My mother sounded stressed already. What situation? Everything's paid for. The payment was made by Pearl Donovan. And Pearl Events & Co. has been notified that she's been removed from the guest list. So, that's a personal matter. Mrs. Morrison, Amanda said carefully, Pearl Donovan is Pearl Events & Co. She owns the venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, everything. The silence on the other end was deafening. Then, what? She owns all the vendors you chose. They're all subsidiaries of her company. That's impossible. My mother's voice was getting shrill. We chose those vendors ourselves. We researched them. They operate under different business names, but they're all owned by Pearl Events & Co. And since Pearl paid for everything to her own companies, and she's the owner, she has the right to cancel all services. My mother started panicking. She can't do that. We paid. Actually, Pearl paid. To her own companies. Mrs. Morrison, I need to be clear. Tomorrow's wedding is entirely at Pearl's discretion right now. Let me speak to whoever is in charge. The CEO will contact you directly within the hour, Amanda said, and hung up. My phone immediately started ringing. Heather. Then my mother. Then my father. Then Jack. I silenced them all. Then my phone rang from the unknown number again. Brandon. I answered. Hello? Pearl, it's Brandon. His voice was quiet, serious. I know what you're thinking of doing. Do you? Canceling everything. Making them face consequences. And honestly, they deserve it. But I need to tell you something first. I called off the wedding, but I'm reconsidering. Why? I asked carefully. Because Heather broke down after I left. Really broke down. She called me 3 hours later from a therapist's office. Apparently, your grandmother Grace drove her there and made her go. Grandma Grace? I hadn't expected that, Brandon continued. Heather admitted everything. Years of jealousy. Years of feeling like she could never measure up to you. She said every time you succeeded at something, she felt like she failed at life. And your mother fed into that, constantly comparing you two. Heather said she knows what she did was unforgivable, but she wants to try to fix it. She wants to actually work on herself. That doesn't change what happened, I said quietly. I know. And I told her that. I told her that even if we reschedule the wedding someday, it won't be tomorrow. It won't be until she's proven she's changed. But Pearl, I need you to know that she's trying. She's finally trying. I closed my eyes. Why are you telling me this? Because I know you have all the power right now. And whatever you decide to do, I'll understand. But I wanted you to know that there's a real person under all that jealousy and resentment. A person who might actually be worth saving. He hung up. I sat in my office as the sun set, watching the sky turn orange and purple over the city. I'd built this view, this office, this company, this life. I'd done it all myself, and I'd been proud of it. But what did it mean if the people who were supposed to love me most saw it as a reason to hurt me? My phone rang one more time, a number I recognized. My grandmother, Grace. I answered. Grandma? Pearl, darling. Her voice was steady, clear. It's time we talked. Grandma Grace's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. I owe you an apology, Pearl. A massive one. I sat at that table Sunday and let them toast to hurting you. I said nothing, and that was cowardly of me. I couldn't speak around the lump in my throat. But I need to tell you something, she continued. Something I've been holding on to, waiting for the right moment. Your grandfather left you something before he died. I was supposed to give it to you when you needed it most. And darling, I think that time is now. What did he leave me? I asked. The property upstate. The 40 acres we used to visit when you were little. Remember the land with the pond and the old barn? I remembered. We'd spent summers there when I was young. It was beautiful, peaceful. I'd loved it. He left it to you, Pearl. All of it. It's in a trust with my name on it, but the deed transfers to you. The land is worth about $2.3 million. I nearly dropped the phone. What? Your mother doesn't know. She thinks that property is going to be split between all the grandchildren when I pass. But your grandfather was very specific. He left it to you and only you. Why? I whispered. Because he knew. He saw how your mother compared you kids. He saw how your success made everyone else feel inadequate instead of inspired. He told me, right before he died, that you were the only one who would truly appreciate that land. The only one who earned it through your own merit, not through inheritance or expectation. Grandma, I said, tears finally falling, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, sweetheart. But I need to ask you something. Are you going to let your mother's bitterness destroy who you are? Or are you going to show them the grace your grandfather believed you had? I sat with that question. Grace, not weakness, not letting them walk all over me, but grace, the kind that comes from strength, from knowing who you are even when others try to tear you down. I'll call you back, Grandma, I said. I know you will. Whatever you decide, I'm proud of you. After she hung up, I sat alone in my office for another hour. Then I called Maya. She answered immediately. Boss? I need you to gather every single vendor we have. Everyone. I need them tonight. You're canceling the wedding? Her voice was neutral, ready to support whatever I chose. No, I said slowly. I'm saving it. And I'm making it better than they ever could have imagined. There was a pause. What? I'm going to show them what real grace looks like, Maya. Get everyone to the warehouse in 2 hours. Tell them I'll pay triple overtime. We have a wedding to transform. For the next 6 hours, my team and I worked like we'd never worked before. I called in every favor, contacted every employee, reached out to everyone who'd ever believed in me. And they all showed up. We upgraded everything. The flowers went from beautiful to breathtaking, adding $8,000 in exotic arrangements and installations. The catering menu expanded to include lobster and filet mignon, a $12,000 upgrade. We added a champagne fountain and premium top-shelf bar for $6,000. I brought in my absolute best photography and videography team, the ones who usually shot celebrity weddings, a $5,000 upgrade. A live string quartet during dinner, $3,000. Custom uplighting and projection mapping for the venue, $4,000. And a surprise fireworks display for the end of the night, $7,000. $45,000 in upgrades. I was giving them a wedding worth $133,000 total. While my team worked, I wrote letters, one for each family member. In them, I explained what I'd done and why. I wrote that family meant showing up, even when it's hard. That love isn't transactional. That I was choosing to give freely, without expecting anything in return. I wrote that I forgave them, but I also set boundaries. I wouldn't be attending the wedding. That was my choice now, not theirs. But I wanted Heather to have her day, the day she'd always dreamed of. To Heather specifically, I wrote about our childhood. About the sister I remembered, the one who laughed at my jokes and held my hand in thunderstorms. I wrote about hoping we could rebuild someday, about how success shouldn't divide people who love each other. I acknowledged her feelings of being overshadowed, but I challenged her to build her own success instead of tearing mine down. And I ended with this. I hope your marriage is filled with more love than our family showed me this week, but I believe it can be. I believe you can be better than this moment. We all can. By 6 a.m. on Saturday, everything was done. I stood in the venue, watching my exhausted team put finishing touches on decorations that would make Heather cry. The sun was rising through the windows, casting golden light across everything we'd created. My phone rang. Amanda, her voice thick with emotion. Pearl, I just got here. Everything you did, it's beautiful. It's beyond beautiful. Make sure she has the perfect day, I said. She doesn't deserve you, Amanda whispered. Maybe not. But I deserve to be the person Grandpa believed I was. At 8 a.m, I was back at my apartment, finally changing out of the clothes I'd been wearing for 24 hours. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but strangely at peace. My doorbell rang. I opened it to find Brandon standing there in jeans and a t-shirt, holding coffee and a bag from my favorite bakery. The fancy one across town that I'd mentioned exactly once in passing months ago. "I heard what you did," he said. "Heather called me at 6, sobbing. She told me about all the upgrades, about the letter." "I didn't do it to get you two back together," I said quickly. "I know. That's why I'm here." He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $88,000. "Brandon, I can't. It's from my personal account, not my mother's money. Money I've been saving for years from my own work. You paid for a wedding you can't attend. You upgraded everything for a sister who betrayed you. Take the money, Pearl. Consider it my investment in the kind of person I want to be." He also handed me a business card. It was for a therapist who specialized in family trauma. "I started seeing her yesterday," he said. "I think Heather should too. And maybe, if you're willing, we could do a family session someday. Not now. Not soon. But someday. I don't know if Heather and I will work out," he continued. "We have a lot to fix. But I know your family needs healing. And it starts with people being brave enough to do the right thing, even when it's hard. You showed me that." He left before I could respond. I stood in my doorway, holding a check I'd never expected and a business card that represented hope I'd thought was dead. The first real glimpse that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. Saturday afternoon arrived. I'd finally managed to sleep for a few hours, though my dreams were chaotic and unsettling. When I woke at 4 in the evening, my phone showed dozens of new messages. Maya had sent a video call request. I answered, and suddenly I was looking at the wedding in full swing. Maya was there as my representative, and she was walking me through everything we'd created. The venue looked like something from a fairy tale. The upgraded flowers created cascading installations that seemed to float in midair. The lighting transformed the space into something magical. I could see guests in formal attire mingling, champagne glasses in hand, clearly impressed by everything around them. Maya panned the camera to show me the reception area. The tables were set with the upgraded linens and centerpieces we'd added. The cake stood as a masterpiece in the corner. Through the windows, I could see the catering staff preparing the enhanced menu in the kitchen. Then Maya showed me Heather. My sister looked beautiful in her dress, a classic A-line gown with delicate lace sleeves. But her eyes were red and puffy. She'd been crying. She kept looking at an empty chair near the front, the one that would have been mine. "Brandon's there too," Maya said quietly. "They decided to go through with it after all, but it's different now. You can see it." I watched as Brandon stood beside Heather, holding her hand. But there was something tentative in the way they stood together, like they were rebuilt from broken pieces, still fragile. "Everyone read your letters," Maya reported. "Your dad cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes. Your mom hasn't said a word to anyone all day. Jack gave a toast about you being the best of the family. And your grandmother, Grace." She stood up and made an announcement. "What announcement?" I asked. "That you're inheriting the upstate property," she told everyone right there, in front of all the guests. She said you're the grandchild who honored your grandfather's legacy, that you embodied everything he valued: hard work, integrity, and grace under pressure. I wiped at my eyes, frustrated that I was crying again. "Heather keeps looking at your empty seat," Maya said softly. "She wrote you a letter too. She asked me to give it to you." Maya held up an envelope to the camera. "I'll bring it Monday," she said. "But Pearl, I think you should know. I think she finally gets it. What she almost lost. Who you really are." We stayed on the video call for another hour. I watched from a distance as my family celebrated, as Heather and Brandon cut their cake, as everyone danced to music provided by vendors I owned and paid for. It was strange, being both present and absent, creating everything while experiencing nothing. But somehow, it felt right. 1 week later, I was sitting in my office on a Wednesday afternoon when Maya knocked on my door. "There are some people here to see you," she said. "Your family." I looked up sharply. All of them? All of them. I took a deep breath and nodded. Maya opened the door wider and they filed in. My mother Diane, my father Robert, Heather, Jack, and Grandma Grace. Heather stepped forward first, her hands clasped in front of her like a child about to be scolded. "We're here to listen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Really, listen. For as long as it takes." I gestured to the chairs and couch in my office. They all sat, and an uncomfortable silence settled over the room. Finally, my mother spoke. "I need to start," she said, "because this starts with me." I looked at her. She seemed smaller somehow, diminished. "Pearl, I owe you an apology that I don't even know how to begin." Diane's voice cracked. "I spent the last week in therapy, 2 sessions already, and I'm starting to understand what I've done. Not just last week, but for years." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I never finished college. Did you know that? I got pregnant with you during my junior year and dropped out. Your father and I got married, and I became a mom at 21. I always told myself I'd go back, but I never did." "Mom," I started, but she held up a hand. "Please, let me finish. Watching you succeed, watching you build this incredible business and life, it made me feel like I'd failed. Every achievement of yours was a reminder of what I didn't do. And instead of being proud, instead of celebrating you, I resented you. I made you the villain in a story where I was the victim." Tears were running down her face now. "I convinced myself that you thought you were better than us, that your success was an insult to me. So I poisoned Heather against you. I fed her jealousy. I justified excluding you by telling myself you didn't really want to be part of the family anyway." She looked directly at me. "But you did want to be part of the family. You showed up. You paid for everything. You loved us even when we didn't love you back, and I tried to destroy you for it." My father cleared his throat. "I need to apologize too. I went along with everything your mother said. I never questioned it. I never stood up for you. When you came to the house that day and your mother told you to leave, I should have stopped her. I should have defended you. But I was a coward." Jack spoke next. "I told you I couldn't choose sides. But that was wrong. There were no sides. There was just right and wrong, and I chose wrong by staying silent." Then Heather, her voice shaking. "I don't even know where to start, Pearl. I've been seeing the therapist Brandon recommended, twice already this week, and I'm going 3 times next week. She helped me understand something. My jealousy of you wasn't really about you. It was about me." Heather looked down at her hands. "You left home and built something amazing, and I stayed home and didn't build anything. I worked jobs I hated. I dreamed about doing more, but never actually did it. And every time I saw you, I felt like a failure. So I convinced myself that you were the problem, not me." She finally met my eyes. "When Mom started telling me you were controlling and condescending, I grabbed onto it, because it was easier than admitting I was jealous. It was easier than facing my own insecurity and lack of direction. What you did for the wedding," Heather continued, her voice breaking, "upgrading everything after we treated you so horribly, it broke something open in me. You showed me what real strength looks like. And it's not what I thought. It's not about winning or proving yourself. It's about choosing love when you have every reason to choose hate." I sat quietly, letting them all speak. Part of me wanted to stay angry, to hold on to the hurt. But another part of me, the part that had spent a week thinking about grace and forgiveness, understood something important. Hurt people hurt people. And my family was full of hurting people. "I'm willing to try," I said finally. "But things have to change. Real change, not just apologies." Over the next 2 hours, we talked. Really talked. Maybe for the first time in years. We set boundaries. We established rules for communication. We agreed to family therapy together, starting next month. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even easy. There were moments of tension, of old patterns trying to reassert themselves. But there was also something new, honesty. As they were leaving, Heather hung back. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Will you teach me?" "Not give me money or connections, but actually teach me how to build something of my own?" I studied her face, looking for sincerity, and I found it. "What do you want to build?" "I don't know yet," she admitted, "but I want to figure it out. I want to be proud of myself the way you're proud of yourself. I want to stop measuring my worth by comparing it to yours." I nodded slowly. "Okay, let's start next week. Come to the office Tuesday morning. We'll talk about what interests you, what you're good at, and how to turn that into something real." Her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you, Pearl. Thank you for being willing to try," I replied. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. My family started showing up. Not perfectly, but consistently. My mother came to my office and asked if she could volunteer with my team for a small wedding we were planning for a low-income couple. She wanted to understand what I did, she said, to see the work that went into it. I said yes, and watched her spend 8 hours helping arrange flowers and set up chairs. At the end, she was exhausted, but smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. My father asked if I wanted to have coffee, just the two of us. We met at a cafe near my apartment and talked for 3 hours about everything and nothing. He told me about his regrets, about feeling like he'd failed as a father by not protecting me. I told him we couldn't change the past, but we could build something better now. Jack started texting me regularly, sending me funny memes and asking about my day. Small things, but they mattered. They showed he was trying. And Heather. Heather showed up to my office every Tuesday morning at 9 sharp. We'd spend 2 hours talking about business, about finding your passion, about building something from nothing. I watched her start to come alive as she explored different ideas. She wanted to work with nonprofits, she discovered. She loved the idea of event planning for organizations that couldn't afford it. So we started developing a plan together for a nonprofit arm of my business. Brandon and Heather went to couples counseling twice a week. They postponed their honeymoon indefinitely, choosing instead to focus on building a stronger foundation. Brandon's mother, Carol, had been completely cut off after refusing to apologize for her behavior. Brandon told me she'd sent a brief, insincere email that basically said she was sorry people were offended. He'd responded by blocking her number. Meanwhile, something else was happening. The story of what I'd done had somehow leaked to the press. Jack had mentioned it to a friend who happened to be a journalist, and that friend had seen the story potential. Within days, articles started appearing. The wedding planner who saved her sister's wedding after being betrayed. Business owner chooses grace over revenge. How one woman turned family betrayal into a lesson in forgiveness. My phone started ringing with interview requests. Brides magazine wanted to feature me, the Knot called. Forbes reached out about a profile. Local news stations wanted to talk to me. Maya fielded most of them, but I did agree to a few interviews. I kept my message consistent. Family is hard. Forgiveness is harder. But choosing grace doesn't mean accepting mistreatment. It means refusing to let other people's actions define who you are. The response was overwhelming. My bookings tripled within a month. Couples were calling specifically because they'd read about me. They wanted someone who understood that weddings weren't just about the pretty details, but about the relationships being celebrated. I had to hire 5 new staff members, then 10 more. My business was expanding faster than I'd ever imagined, and it was all because I'd chosen kindness in a moment when cruelty would have been justified. 3 months after the wedding, Grandma Grace called me to her house. When I arrived, she had paperwork spread across her dining room table. "The deed to the upstate property," she said, pushing it toward me. "It's officially yours now. I had my lawyer transfer it this morning." I looked at the document, at the 40 acres that now belonged to me. "Grandma, what am I supposed to do with this?" She smiled. "Whatever you want, darling. But I have a suggestion. I waited. Build something there. Something that honors your grandfather's memory. Something that helps people. Something that shows what you've learned. I thought about it for a long time. And slowly, an idea formed. I started designing a retreat center on the property. Grace Point, I called it, naming it after my grandmother. It would serve multiple purposes: a premium wedding venue for those who could afford it, and a non-profit event space offering free services to low-income families. Heather's non-profit arm of the business would be based there. She'd coordinate free weddings, anniversaries, and celebrations for families who couldn't otherwise afford them. All the profits from the paid events would fund the free ones. Construction started in November. My entire family came to the groundbreaking. We all put on hard hats and took turns with a ceremonial shovel, breaking ground on something new, something better. The first event at Grace Point was scheduled for 6 months later, my parents' 30th wedding anniversary. They'd asked if they could renew their vows there, on the land that now represented healing and second chances. Of course, I'd said. Let's make it beautiful. Heather planned it, with my guidance. She was getting good at this, discovering she had a real talent for organization and creativity. She was also enrolled in community college, taking business courses. She wanted to do this right, she'd told me. To build real skills, not just coast on my help. Brandon proposed to her again, properly this time, 6 months after their original wedding. They'd done the work in therapy. They'd rebuilt trust. They'd learned to communicate. And when he got down on one knee in my office, with Maya and me as witnesses, he said something that made me cry. "I'm not asking you to marry me because I love who you were," he said to Heather. "I'm asking because I love who you're becoming. And I want to become better alongside you." They decided to have a small ceremony at Grace Point when it opened. Just family and close friends. Nothing elaborate, just real. The night before Grace Point's official opening, I stood on the property watching the sunset. The retreat center was beautiful, all natural wood and glass, designed to blend with the landscape. The pond reflected the orange sky. The old barn had been renovated into a charming event space. Maya came to stand beside me. "You did it, boss. You turned the worst moment of your life into something beautiful." "We did it," I corrected. "None of this happens without people who show up." My family arrived then, pulling up in a caravan of cars. They were bringing food for the celebration tomorrow. Heather had coordinated everything, proving she could manage a major event from start to finish. As they unloaded supplies and laughed together, Heather caught my eye and smiled. "Thank you," she mouthed. "Thank you for trying," I mouthed back. That night, we all sat around a fire pit on the property, talking and telling stories. My father told embarrassing childhood tales about all of us. My mother actually laughed, real laughter that reached her eyes. Jack played guitar badly and sang worse, but we all sang along anyway. Grandma Grace dozed in her chair, a contented smile on her face. And I realized something. This was what I'd been fighting for all along. Not perfection, not acknowledgement. Just this, family choosing to show up for each other. Broken people working to be less broken. It wasn't everything. There were still hard days. Still moments of tension when old patterns tried to resurface. But we were trying, all of us. And that was enough. The grand opening of Grace Point was everything I'd hoped it would be. Over 200 people came to celebrate. Clients I'd worked with over the years, colleagues from the industry, friends who'd supported me, and of course my family. My parents renewed their vows in a simple ceremony by the pond. They'd written new vows, ones that acknowledged their failures and their commitment to doing better. When my father promised to protect his children from cruelty, even when it came from within the family, he looked directly at me. When my mother promised to celebrate her children's successes instead of resenting them, her voice broke. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was a real one. Messy and imperfect and honest. Heather stood beside me during the ceremony, and when she squeezed my hand, I squeezed back. She'd come so far. We all had. After the ceremony, I gave a speech about Grace Point's mission, about providing beautiful moments for everyone, regardless of their financial situation, about honoring my grandfather's belief that land should be used to build community and create joy. But the truth is, I said, looking out at all the faces watching me, this place isn't really about weddings or events. It's about second chances. It's about what happens when we choose to grow instead of staying stuck in our pain. It's about the possibility of transformation. I paused, finding my family in the crowd. 3 months ago, I experienced one of the worst betrayals imaginable. My family took my money, excluded me from an event I'd paid for, and tried to justify it by painting me as the villain. I had every right to destroy them. I had the power to do it. I owned everything they needed for that wedding. But I made a different choice. Not because I'm a saint or because I'm weak, but because I realized something important. Revenge might feel good in the moment, but it leaves you empty afterward. Grace, real grace, is harder. It requires strength. It requires believing that people can be better than their worst moments. And here's what I learned. The greatest power isn't in destroying your enemies. It's in turning them back into family, not by letting them hurt you repeatedly, not by accepting abuse, but by setting boundaries while still leaving room for redemption, by showing them who you are when you choose love over bitterness. I looked at my mother, who was crying, at my father, who stood with his arm around her, at Heather, who was openly sobbing beside Brandon, at Jack, filming everything on his phone, at Grandma Grace, who nodded at me with fierce pride. My grandfather left me this land because he believed in who I could become. Not just a successful businesswoman, but a person who understands that true success isn't measured in dollars or achievements. It's measured in the relationships we build, the grace we extend, and the legacy we leave behind. Grace Point exists because my family hurt me deeply, and I chose to build something beautiful from that pain instead of letting it destroy me. And I hope that everyone who comes here, whether for a luxury wedding or a free celebration, leaves understanding something important. We're all capable of both terrible betrayal and incredible transformation. The question is, which will we choose? The crowd applauded. People came up afterward to hug me, to tell me their own stories of family pain and reconciliation, to thank me for sharing something so vulnerable. But the moment that mattered most came later that evening. The sun had set, and most guests had left. Just family remained, sitting around the fire pit again. Heather cleared her throat. I want to say something. We all turned to look at her. 6 months ago, I was the worst version of myself. I let jealousy and insecurity turn me into someone cruel, someone who could take $88,000 from her sister and still feel justified in excluding her. She looked at the fire, then at me. Pearl, you showed me what strength really means. It's not about winning. It's not about proving yourself. It's about choosing love when you have every reason to choose hate. She took a shaky breath. I'm not fixed. I'm still working through a lot in therapy. I still have days where I feel inadequate or jealous or angry. But I'm learning, and I'm building something of my own now, thanks to you teaching me. In 2 months, we're hosting our first free wedding here. A young couple, both teachers, who could never afford anything like this. And I planned the whole thing. Me. And I'm so proud of that. You should be, I said softly. You earned it. Heather smiled through her tears. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive myself for what I did to you. But I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of your forgiveness. And trying to be the sister you deserved all along. My mother spoke next. We all are. Every day, we're going to try to be better. To be the family you deserved. And we did. Not perfectly. There were setbacks. There were hard conversations and moments of frustration. Family therapy sessions that left us all emotionally exhausted. But we kept showing up. Grace Point thrived. In its first year, we hosted 40 paid weddings and provided 20 free celebrations for families in need. The nonprofit arm grew. Heather hired 2 assistants and was considering getting her degree in social work to better serve the communities we worked with. My business continued expanding. By the end of the year, Pearl Events & Co. operated in 6 cities. I was featured in Forbes' 30 Under 40 Inches, the hospitality industry. But the achievement I was most proud of was the testimonial from a bride whose free wedding Heather had planned. She wrote, "Grace Point didn't just give us a wedding, it gave us hope. It showed us that people still believe in kindness, in lifting others up, in creating beauty for the sake of beauty. That matters more than you'll ever know." That's the legacy I wanted to build. Not just successful businesses, but meaningful impact. 1 year after that terrible phone call from Amanda, I stood in my office looking at a framed photo on my desk. It was from Grace Point's opening. My whole family, smiling genuinely, standing together in front of the retreat center. We looked happy, complicated, but happy. My phone rang. It was Heather. I answered. "Hey," she said, her voice excited. "I just booked our 50th free event. A couple who've been together for 40 years but never had a wedding ceremony. We're giving them one next month." "That's amazing, Heather. I'm so proud of you." "I learned from the best," she said. "Thanks for not giving up on me, Pearl. Thanks for showing me who I could be. Thanks for being willing to become her," I replied. After we hung up, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed me. The choice to respond with grace instead of revenge. The slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. The beautiful things that had grown from that broken place. I'd learned that you can't control how people treat you. You can only control how you respond. I'd learned that forgiveness isn't about letting people off the hook. It's about refusing to let their actions define your character. I'd learned that real strength isn't in winning battles. It's in choosing peace when war would be easier. Most importantly, I'd learned that family isn't about perfection. It's about people who are willing to do the hard work of growth, who show up even when it's uncomfortable, who choose connection over comfort. My family had hurt me deeply, but they'd also shown me who I wanted to be when faced with that hurt. They'd given me the opportunity to prove that my success wasn't just about business acumen. It was about character, and in the end, that was the greatest gift of all. So here's what I want to leave you with. When someone betrays you, you have a choice. You can burn everything down, and sometimes that's valid. Sometimes people don't deserve your grace. But if there's even a chance for redemption, if the people who hurt you are willing to do the real work of change, consider giving them that chance. Not for them, for you. Because choosing grace doesn't make you weak. It makes you powerful in a way that revenge never could. That's the kind of legacy worth leaving. That's the kind of person worth being. And that's the sister my grandfather believed I could be. Now I have a question for you. Have you ever been in a situation where someone close to you betrayed your trust? How did you handle it? Did you choose revenge, or did you find a way to choose grace? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about forgiveness differently, or inspired you to be more gracious in your own life, please hit that like button. It helps others who need this message find it. And subscribe to the channel for more stories about real people navigating complicated relationships and finding their way to healing. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Someone struggling with family conflict. Someone trying to decide between bitterness and grace. Someone who needs to know that choosing kindness doesn't make you a doormat. It makes you strong. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community where we share our struggles and our growth. I hope you found something here that speaks to your own journey. May you find the strength to set boundaries and the courage to extend grace. May you build the life you want while leaving room for the people you love to grow. And may you always remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by who you choose to be in response. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and remember that second chances, when earned, can lead to the most beautiful transformations. Until next time.